talk to you of ours.
Yes.
For there is nothing else.
Are you all ready to join me today on our trip to outer space?
Come along quietly or not.
You can have all the talent in the world and never get anywhere.
Some artists bait a hook to let you bite upon it.
And now, without further ado,
Coming to you loud and clear.
Hello, folks. Thanks for checking out another episode of the Planet Shivers podcast. I'm going to keep this little introduction short because we got a big episode ahead. In this episode, I sit down with former actress and stand-up comedian Ella Steinbeck, who is now battling Lyme's disease and EDS. This episode is a heavy one. Her and I both try to keep it as light as we can, but chronic illness really is no joke. In the summer of last year, I went through a very miniature bout with Lyme as compared to Ella, and we cover that a little bit as well, sort of comparing notes and experiences. Before we get into the episode, I just want to remind everybody there's a new Patreon account. You could support this podcast there if you go on Patreon and look up Albert Shivers Artist. Also, I'm going to be having a new show coming up in January. I was invited to take part in an erotic art show. I'm going to be working on some filth for the next month and a half, just in time for the holidays. And that show will be happening in January, and I'll fill everybody in as it gets closer. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to the Albert Shivers, I keep dropping my phone, Albert Shivers YouTube channel. You can get all the podcasts end up there. I'm going to be posting video content from the last podcast with Don Wilson. While we were there, Isaac and I filmed a good bit. So right now we're editing that footage together in a nice little chunk that's palatable for folks. And that'll be going up on the Albert Shivers YouTube channel. So please subscribe. Every subscriber helps myself out, as well as all the artists and interviewees that were on the podcast and everybody who works on things in terms of filming and editing. So if you're watching this or listening to this on YouTube now, hit the subscribe button just for a second. And if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, hop over to YouTube, hit subscribe. We'd all really appreciate it. Also, I'm going to be working on getting this podcast on Spotify, so that'll be cool. That should be happening soon. And that's about it. Let's get to the interview with Ella Steinbeck. Okay, folks, this is Albert Shivers, and this is another episode of Planet Shivers. I'm here on location again in New York City with actress, comedian, and unfortunately Lyme's disease sufferer, and help me with the other one.
Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
And that one, not to be like no disrespect, but I didn't want to screw it up. And we're going to talk about all that. So Ella, thanks for doing the show. And welcome.
Thank you.
So I guess we'll first jump into your acting stuff. You were in 2 films of mine in season where you played the expert on incest, which was fun. And those scenes, like everybody, I love how like the head scratcher of those scenes when I've shown that film, like who would be an expert in this? But you were.
An expert in incest. What do you know, right? You know, you don't pick the roles pick you.
Right.
I don't know what that means, but
it worked out.
Yeah, it did.
And then you end up being.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
That was a heavy, a lot of heavy dialogue.
Yeah, I didn't
Very
feel good about it. But all that was real research. And that was the crazy thing about that film is what I basically did was got bits from different doctors and just mushed them together, changed the wording so it wasn't totally a ripoff.
Right.
And then handed you this lump of dialogue. But
Yeah, it was a lot.
But you did well. Like, you know, we got through it and it worked.
We tricked people. They thought I was
Oh,
really a
they
psychologist about
did.
incest.
Oh, you know, one festival, people thought it was an actual documentary. And the thing
Wow.
was, I'm sitting there, and
Right,
I'm in the
so
movie.
they think you.
So, like, that was the thing that baffled me. I was like, I'm sitting here, like, you know I'm the director of this movie, and I'm in it. So, like, but they did, like, people, like, 2 or 3 people, like, so, like, where are they now? Like, what's
Where
going
are
on?
they? They didn't even see you as that person.
Yeah. And I didn't look much different.
Right.
Really, like, I know I shaved for the movie, but I don't know, like, it should be more.
That's how unobservant I guess people are. But it's interesting. At least they didn't come up to you and go, "So did you and your sister break up?"
Right. Well, in the end of the movie, we do. And it's like, the movie ends on a real downer, because I end up breaking up with my sister, and then she's just left alone, brewing.
Okay.
By the end of the movie. So you haven't seen it finished.
And you know what? Now that you're saying
feel
that, I think
bad.
I did see it finished.
Okay.
Because now that you said that, I'm like, oh, somehow I knew you broke up. So
Okay.
I must have seen it. Because as soon as you said that, I was like, oh, that's right.
I also feel
But
like
maybe
your
we talked about
character, I think, has a comment on the breakup too. That may be.
I think
what
so.
you remember.
I think I did see it.
Okay.
I know I'm
Okay.
being very vague right
No,
now,
it's
but
fine.
but I remember watching the clip. I must have seen the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 I may have sent
I
it
saw
to you or something. I know I didn't post
You
it
sent me a
anywhere.
link.
Okay.
Yes.
So it might have been up for a little bit.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah, I did see it. That's right. You did break up with your sister.
Yeah. It was tough, but
You guys never got back together?
We never got back together. No, it's a shame. We're all talking again for the first time, so that's good. And but hopefully she's still be able to move on.
Yes.
You know, it's a big apartment to be in alone.
That's right.
But yeah. And you were also in my film directly after that, The Healer, which was about an artist, a young female artist, just trying to figure it out. And you gave the good news. Like you were the relief of that film.
Yeah, she made it into, it was the festival,
It
yeah?
was like a jazz festival,
Yeah.
yeah. Which was, it was so, like, writing it, I was like, this is so me. And everyone's going to know that this girl is me. Like, her name was Alice. So it was, like, totally, like, unbashful writing myself into it. But it was cool.
You picked a girl to play you.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah.
That's very open-minded.
Yeah, well, I wanted, like, the actress who played Alice, I knew her from the college by me, and she wanted to be in something, and I wanted to work with you again. I wanted to work with another actress, Irma, again, who played Alice's older sister.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. You know, because honestly, why can't a woman play a man play a woman? We're just, like, beings. So I think that's
Right.
really, actually, I think that's awesome.
No, thank you. It was fun. But, yeah, you played the
Yeah, well,
person for, like, a jazz festival that she won this contest to her art be used on a poster.
right.
And you delivered that news, and then you interviewed her.
Mm-hmm.
And those interviews ended up being cut from the final movie, which is on YouTube for people to all go see. It's free, and it's just...
It was very cool.
Yeah.
And I always appreciated you using me again, so
Oh, yeah.
thank
yeah.
you.
And you were also in, was it Vinyl? that you
Yeah,
appeared
I was in Vinyl
Okay.
as a prostitute.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's-
In the back of a plane, drinking and doing cocaine, where they used one line, and you can barely make it out when you watch it. And I think I said, what did I say? I said, I don't know, because there's a girl going on and on about who's the Russian? Chekhov. She's going on about Chekhov, which I honestly have no idea about. So as she's rambling about it, I say, I don't know. And you can barely make that out on the actual show. But I did. I had a line.
Yeah.
They used one line.
And you also did a film, I remember while we were working on In Season, you did a film called Common Alligator.
Yes.
And,
That was more of a full-length kind of thing that actually got cut down, I think, to a half hour. But originally it was like a 90-minute,
length.
and then I don't know what happened to that, but that was actually a very cool role. And it took us a long time to make it, so you really got into character, and you know,
Right.
It was actually kind of awesome.
Cool. And that end up in festivals or anything?
I don't know what she ended up doing with it. Film projects are weird because you're really at the mercy. The director, producer is really at the mercy of the actors, right? And the actors are at the mercy of the other, and neither one can do anything without the other. Without one or the other, it's all nothing. So, I don't know. She just kind of dropped out of existence. You just quit hearing from her, and then, we kind of found that something had posted about it, and then we saw the link, and it was more like a half hour, and instead of the movie that she was supposed to make, I don't even know. I don't know what happened to her.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I remember hearing about that, and we would talk about it in between, because when we filmed in season, I think we did that in like one shot, one day.
Right.
I came by.
Yes.
And we just had to change clothes.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's a different day, and she's inside now.
All right, and then we were on the patio.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. There was a lot of sound editing that was a poor choice on my part, because the city sounds, I was like, so I learned a lot about sound editing, and just to get your voice up, and like beeps and honks and like just noise down.
New York.
But it worked out. Like it sounded fine. I did, like I said, kind of like learning just by being thrown into it.
Right. Well, that's the best way to learn, right?
Yeah.
True.
And you also do stand-up comedy, which I was very interested in when we first started talking. Are you still involved in that, or not so much?
So, stand-up comedy was one of those things. Okay, so about 13 years ago, I was in a lot of pain. I was living in Las Vegas. I was a successful hairstylist. We were trying to figure out why I was hurting. Took some time off work for physical therapy, and never got released from physical therapy. At the same time, got married and moved to New York. I was told, you got to go see this rheumatologist. Maybe he can help you. He diagnosed me with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, said you can't work, you can't work out, don't do any stretching, just take care of your body kind of thing. Right. So I was really feeling crazed because I had no creative outlet, right? I've been this physical, I've been creating things, I really have a love for, fashion and style of any sort.
So how long were you a hairdresser in Vegas for?
7 years.
Okay.
But so what happened was I lived right near the comic strip. So they had this little thing that said, like comedy writing classes. And I'm like, well, I've always liked writing. Maybe I'll go do that just so I had something, some kind of outlet. Yeah. And I started taking the classes, and then the person who taught it, he did not recommend open mics or anything. Okay. So it's like you take this class, you learn how to write a joke, and then you just go sit at home. And I was like, well, that's not cool. So I went and took another comedy writing class, right, with a well-known stand-up comic. And I was really digging it, and I was meeting women who were doing open mics. And I was like, oh, well, I enjoy this writing thing, but it just sits in my computer. So I guess the only way people can hear it is if I go tell it to them. Right. So, and then I started doing open mics, and then eventually I was, doing open mics 2 or 3 a night, 5 times a week. I would try to take weekends off unless I was getting paid, and I was producing a show up in Rockland County at the Turning Point. Just opportunities start happening, or lack of opportunities in some regard. But yeah, so I did that for, off and on for about 7 years. Then a couple years ago, I started to get really more sick, and it was hurting me a lot, which this was coming and going, but it was hurting for me to get on my laptop because my wrist hurt a lot. Also, a lot of the comedy clubs, you have to go downstairs. My hip was hurting me really badly. I could not make the walk downstairs. And I just kind of dropped out. It wasn't really, I didn't know that that's what was going to happen. Right. But I have not been able to get myself back into comedy. So here's the thing with stand-up comedy that people don't realize. A lot of the comedy you see are privately produced shows. So you're not actually hired by the club necessarily. Okay. That's what people, I don't think, most people don't understand how that really works. Also, what people don't know is a lot of times you're not getting paid, or if you
Right.
are getting paid, you're getting like $20, $25 a spot. So
Yeah.
these top comedians, you can name any of them, but they'll hit as many clubs as they can in a night, all getting about $25 per spot. So
Right.
you've got to hop around quite a bit to make a living.
Yeah.
And the most money you're going to make is working for a event or a produced show where you're
Right.
the headliner or
Right.
other type of talent.
Yeah, I was just listening to a thing with Judah Friedlander,
Mm-hmm.
and he talked about that exact same thing. And then that going on the road ends up being more lucrative
Yes.
than staying in the city.
Totally. Yes, you can. If you go on the road, they say you can basically make 6 figures a year. But again, you're living in a car,
Right.
or if you decide to take a plane, you're paying for your plane ticket. The only thing you're paid is for your performance, and they will give you like a comedy condo or a hotel room, but it's usually not very nice. And it's a rough life. As far as stand-up comedy goes, it's a solo sport. There's not a lot of team effort. People are either not liking you because you have a better joke than them, or there's a lot of addiction, mental illness that goes on in stand-up comedy. So it's hard because you're really alone out there. And, I'm sure this isn't a great thing to have to say, but it can be very parasitic, right? Because people want to hear what was good about them or whatever. It's all about them. So they'll talk to you, but they're really robbing you because they just want to hear about themselves. And so there's not a lot of back and forth, which is very alienating. Okay. There's a reason there's a lot of suicide in stand-up comedy.
Right.
Because it's very, very lonely, and you're constantly in your own head. It's not like playing in a band, right? And you're like, hey guys, check out this bad audience. No, that bad audience you are internalizing.
Exactly.
It is all my fault.
Yeah.
And then you just loop all day about your jokes. Is that the right word? Or how could I tweak it? And it can be crazy making.
No, I could imagine.
Yeah. So there's definitely a dark side of comedy. People do not talk about it enough. They think, oh, it's comedy, it's fun. And let me just tell you, people who've done it for any length of time, it stops being fun. Maybe if you're Jerry Seinfeld, he's a very lighthearted person, but for a lot of people, there's a real darkness involved in doing it. But and also being self-deprecating, it just feeds that. I'm shitty, and I'm telling jokes about myself being shitty. It's kind of hard, if you keep telling yourself you're, not great. How does your mind fight that, right? You're constantly, reinforcing a negative self-talk instead of a positive self-talk, which can be very, if you're already prone to depression or anxiety, it can be very, very heavy to carry around, so.
I believe it.
Yeah. So there is a lot of that. Comedy was hard. I had a very love-hate relationship with it because I do love the writing, but the performing, first of all, I don't have that thing where I need to be on stage and I love people clapping.
Right.
To me, I was like, okay, I told my jokes, I left, I'm good.
Right.
I don't need to do this 10 more times tonight, which a lot of people do. It's like a sickness. It's a drug, right? I do not have that. It's different for everyone, but there's a lot of comics who do not like comedy, and I have to say, I kind of started to get to that point. It was like, if I never hear anything funny again, I'm fine. I could not watch comedies on TV. I could not watch other people's stand-up comedy.
Okay.
It really got to a really kind of dark place. And not that I didn't appreciate brilliant comics. I do, and I still do. It's just I wasn't interested.
Right.
It was kind of like people would say, hey, you want to go watch comedy? I'm like, no, I work at the tire factory. On my days off, I do not want to watch tires being made.
Right, exactly.
So that's kind of how comedy got for me, which seems crazy to people who aren't in it.
Right.
They don't understand. Oh, it's fun. It's comedy. It's laughing. It's
It's like in the little tiny comparison, the little minute times that I've done it, it's totally different when you're alone. I think I play a little bit of music, and I've played music in front of people, and I've tried to do comedy in front of people, and that instrument is like your buddy
Yeah.
who's there for you, and you don't even realize that until you're up there without it.
Without anything.
Without anything.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I can get that. You know, and I did open mics at comedy places in Philly,
Okay.
and I then was like, I'm gonna try not to do it, and they were fine. Like they weren't great, they weren't bad, they were just mediocre. And I'm like, cool. I'm gonna try to go somewhere where it's not just comedy. And I followed a 9-year-old girl who sang all about that bass.
Wow. You can't compete with that.
And it's like,
you
I
can't
should just
compete with
walk
that. Go
out
kill
of there.
yourself.
Right. You should just leave. Just leave.
Yeah.
Just leave right now.
Yeah, you can't follow
Because the story of my mother finding the Tyra Banks magazine in my bed and under my mattress isn't gonna beat that girl.
No.
It's just not gonna do
You
it.
cannot beat that.
No one's gonna care.
No.
But I went up there and like my method, which I picked up just from hearing other people talk about it, is to not like literally fixate, but to concentrate on the people who are enjoying you. And just try to ignore the other people. So I remember there was these two like heavyset women right in the front who for whatever reason found me fucking hilarious. So I was like, okay, good. I'll just kind of direct my energy to them and ignore like the big weird biker dudes who are done with me before I even got up there. So, yeah.
Well, you know, the other the thing about comedy is there's nothing worse than a comic or any performer, honestly, in a live area is paying more attention to the people they're getting, you know, negative feedback from than the ones where they're like, let me tell them off. No, don't ruin the show for the rest of the people who are enjoying you. Just ignore them. That is one of my biggest pet peeves. But you know, there's also a lot of sexism in comedy, and as a woman, you get up on stage, you're already fighting, right? Because they're like, oh, who's this girl? She's not going to be funny. She's a girl. And then, you know, it's like this crazy thing. So it's, as a woman, especially, you're fighting. Although guys would say, you know, the comedy market's flooded with guys, right? How do they stand out? You know, but it's still, it's a man's world.
I've seen it become like, especially like, how do I put it? Like the attractiveness of the woman becomes, which is meaninless. If she, you know, you're funny. One thing has very little to do with the other. But when you're just judging by the looks of someone, it will totally affect the way the audience takes you.
Let me just tell you. So this is the feedback you get as a female. Is if you're attractive, if a girl's on a date with a guy,
right, she's
worried that he's gonna find you attractive, right?
Okay.
And he's only think of you in a sexual way, right? Apparently, this is the feedback you're told from club owners.
Okay.
That men cannot differentiate, right, between being able to listen to a woman and being able to visualize her in bed, right? Men, you're not capable of it. I don't know if anyone told you. You can't do it.
It's good we're recording this, so I know.
Yes, you should know this.
Okay.
And if you're on a date with a woman, she is so insecure with herself that she cannot see another female on stage and think that you might think she's funny. It's not possible. She can't do that. And that is how comedy has been tailored to audiences.
Wow, okay.
If you are attractive, no one's going to listen to you, and women are going to hate you. And I have been told that by more than one person.
Wow.
Yes.
Jeez.
So, and I'm like, really? Because I tend to think that men probably can figure out they can listen to a woman and not just visualize her in bed.
Right.
And then I do not think women are so insecure that they feel immediately competitive with anyone in front of them. Because that's basically what they're saying. It's like, it's so disgusting.
Yeah.
That is what they have decided is an audience. Because, you know, guys can listen to music and go to a concert. I mean, a woman can sing in front of you and your girlfriend doesn't get mad, right?
Right.
And you're able to maybe not sexualize her. I don't know. Maybe music is different, but to me, that we're really selling people short.
Yeah, no, that's like, yeah, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's like that part of me that like, okay, maybe, but really? You know?
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
And we are only perpetuating that if that's how we are
Right.
pandering to an audience, right? We're just, it makes no sense. It makes no sense. And if that's how it's been, why would we continue to do that for one more day or one more second?
Right.
You know, if you were a club owner, you'd be like, bring on the foxy chicks. I don't care. Let's hope men can hear them.
Right.
I don't know.
Like, give it a shot.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's give everyone a shot, equal shot, and let's hope people can hear them. I don't know. It was very disheartening.
So, in your time doing it, did you also find that there was a difference in, like, in terms of hecklers? Were there more for the females or men, or was that about equal?
You know, it's probably
If at
equal. Yeah, it's pretty equal. I mean, there's some horror stories out there. I can't say, I mean, you know, I've had a couple that, you know, you do have to really shut down because they're sitting right in front and they're drunk and they're, you know, misogynistic and they're saying really nasty, rude things.
Right.
You know, you do deal with those. I know a comic who's had, like, you know, a beer bottle thrown at her head. You know, I mean, you're vulnerable when you're up there, and security in comedy clubs is usually not great, if any. Okay. So, you know, you're taking your life in your hands for what? You know, to tell a joke. I don't know. You know.
Yeah.
Between the time it takes to write a good joke and really make it great, and the risk you're taking with your own safety,
Right.
You start to think, what am I doing?
Yeah. And the thing is, like, the extra difference is, like, if you're a musician, you could sit home and play the trumpet 8 hours a day and be a great trumpeter.
Yeah.
And
Without feedback from an audience.
Like,
Yes,
never have to
absolutely.
leave your house.
Yeah. As funny as I might think I am at home by myself, believe me, totally different when people see it.
I crack myself up constantly at home.
It's a weird thing, stand-up comedy. And until you've actually done it and immersed yourself in it, you really can't understand it, because I certainly didn't before. And, you know, I mean, I did festival. I did, like, you know, the Women in Comedy Festival, which you feel like, oh, that's going to be supportive. It's other women.
Right.
But even then, I mean, yes, you feel supported, but there really isn't much community. And of course, okay, there's exceptions to this, and people are going to be like, but this, I did this, and there's this in this group, and these people had this experience. Yes, everyone has a different experience. Generally speaking, there's not a lot of support even from your own sex. What guys have a different camaraderie, it seems, regularly. Right. You know, they're competitive with each other. They're a little more accepting of each other, whereas women, we feel, you know, I don't know, more competitive because I think we are given less opportunities. So it feels more cutthroat.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because there are so few for us. So it's almost like a systemic treatment, right? We've created this reality for women that they have to fight so much for the few opportunities that we can't even be friendly with each other because you might take something from me. I don't know. I mean, look, this is a very deep psychological conversation. I'm sure that we require a real professional. But look, comedy is not just comedy. Right. I can tell you that. Right. Yeah.
So it was the pain you started to experience that took you away from continuing to pursue that. Mm-hmm. So now at that time, was it just the original diagnosis that was getting worse, or was elements of Lyme starting to creep in?
I have no idea. We're not really clear on what happened when. I just know 13 years ago, my body felt like it was on fire. I had to quit doing hair. I didn't know it was going to be permanent. I thought they were going to fix me. And so my feeling is I probably had some kind of Lyme disease at that time, or Bartonella, or some kind of bug-borne illness that was not investigated at all. Instead, I saw a rheumatologist who said, "You have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome." He closed the book and was like, "That's why you're in pain." End of story. And so for the last 10, 11 years after I got that diagnosis, I didn't get better. I was just trying not to aggravate things to make it worse. Right. Like I said, my hands were coming and going, but that was one of the biggest red flags for me, was when I was doing hair, my hands and wrists were hurting so bad but it hurt to hold my phone or to text, and iPhones had just come out, so it was very exciting to handle an
and
iPhone.
You couldn't even do it.
Right, couldn't do it. So, so that, and like I said, though, that came and went, right? I'm having wrist problems, and I'm a little better. I'm having wrist problems, a little better. But the all-over chronic, like widespread joint and muscle pain was just constant. It would get worse and better. I'd have hip flexor problems. I'd have to walk backwards for a while because it hurt to walk forwards. Like, it's kind of, it was like nutty, right? And then last year, I went to go see someone for some, for pain, for ketamine infusions. They're very intense. They put you out asleep. It takes about 6 to 8 hours. And while I'm there, he said, have you had a Lyme test? I'm like, look, I don't have Lyme. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. This is why I have all these symptoms. And he goes, yeah, but those look just like Lyme. You know, and his wife had had shoulder surgery that they're pretty sure was unnecessary shoulder surgery because it was actually, she had an actual positive Lyme test, but they couldn't get a positive test, so no one was treating her for Lyme disease, and they didn't know till after the surgery that she actually had Lyme, and they're both doctors. So he's telling me this. He has a little bit of credibility because him and his wife are both doctors. So I'm like, well, I'll ask my doctor to run this Lyme test you think I have. And my doctor, he runs it, but he's even saying, you don't have Lyme. And I'm like, I know, that's what I said, but you know, let's just run the test. And normally they run an ELISA AB on it, and if that's negative, they don't continue to investigate. But the thing about an ELISA AB is that is only for an immediate infection, right? So if it's old, a year, 2 years, it's not going to show up on that anyway. So they're not going to run Western blot regardless. But for some reason, mine slipped through. The ELISA came up negative. They still ran the Western blot. We don't know why. But it was blazing positive from LabCorp. You know, all CDC reporting standards, you know. So I had Lyme disease.
Right.
So how long have I had that?
Right.
My guess is at least 13 years when I first felt like I was on fire.
Wow, okay.
So, and that's what we're dealing with.
So now, this is going to sound like a silly question, but just for the sake of the interview, I'll ask it. Those 13 years ago, did you notice any of the rings, any bites or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
No bite.
Neither did I.
Yeah. Most people don't know they had a bite, and anyone who's ever been around a horsefly, a spider, a tick, a mosquito, lice, anything that can bite an animal and a human can make you sick. A tick does not have to be on for any certain amount of time. That bacteria can be transmitted in minutes, not hours, you know, if it is Lyme. But, you know, the thing about, you know, bug-borne illness is it's a lot of bugs. You know, Lyme is a small part of that, but there's a lot of bugs that can make you sick with all kinds of different illnesses. And what's most prominent in our environment is bugs. Bugs are everywhere. Way more common that you would have a bug bacteria than you would have rheumatoid arthritis. Way more common you would have some kind of bug bacteria than you would have, you know, MS, lupus. You know what I mean? Like, it just goes on and on and on. Like, why aren't we looking there first? That's outrageous to me. Yeah.
Man. So I'm just digesting all this.
Yeah.
So you get diagnosed finally with Lyme, and it's very possible you may have had it for 13 years. Where did you go from there?
Well, so I got that diagnosis. I was referred to a guy who was an infectious disease doctor at I don't know, Mount Sinai, you know, one of these hospitals here in New York. Go see him. He says, well, first of all, let me just back up.
Sure.
So I get the diagnosis. I'm looking at this lab report. I'm like, well, I don't know what all this is. And, you know, they always make Lyme sound like this wacky thing. Like, is it wacky? I don't know. I don't know anything about Lyme disease. So I get online and I start looking at what constitutes a positive Lyme test. And what I'm seeing in about 5 minutes of a Google search that I'm not sure why doctors haven't done the same thing, is that there's this thing called CDC positive, right? You have a CDC positive Lyme test. people have confused this into thinking that the reportable bands required by the CDC for reporting purposes are the same as diagnostics. They are not. They are only reporting standards. That's it. They have nothing to do with whether you are sick. Somehow, doctors have misplaced this information and decided that CDC reporting is the same as CDC saying that you're sick. Not the same thing. So you have a lot of people, and I have sent the CDC website finally updated this, but it shouldn't take me to email my doctors and go, hey, the CDC was wrong, but like I'm like, duh, because I Googled it. I could tell with these 5 CDC positive bands that you need to have to be CDC positive are completely random. I don't know why they picked these 5. There's no information on that. And I can see that that's like a baloney thing. So I started looking at different countries, right? How do other countries diagnose Lyme disease? And you have a country like China who will treat one band of Lyme. Where you go to a doctor here, oh, you have only one band, you're not sick. No, one band can mean you're sick. Are you symptomatic? If you're symptomatic, that's when you treat. It doesn't even have to be a positive Lyme test. Are they symptomatic? Because Lyme tests are so notoriously bad unless you go to an expensive lab who knows how to run a really good, consistent, repeatable results. Most of these places can't repeat the same diagnostic. Right. So are you sick? That's when they should treat. And I figured that out like in a Google search, and then it made me furious that my doctors hadn't done that. Why would my Google search be better than your medical degree? And they always say that. You always see those like doctor things. It's like, don't confuse your Google search with my, being a doctor. Yeah. And it's like, well, you know what? Maybe you should try the Google. Right.
Exactly. So now, does the fact that you were ill before, how does that affect the Lyme? Did it make it more intense?
Okay, so it's confusing because we don't know exactly why, because Lyme and EDS, fibromyalgia, MS, lupus, seizures, heart problems, right? They all look the same, right? Are they by themselves or is it a mimicker? Lyme is, they call it, it mimics all these illnesses, so it's hard to piece apart. So that's what I'm hoping to do after I went to the doctor, who I thought was on top of things. He gave me the doxycycline. And I realized he was not the doctor for me when he told me that ovaries don't cause pain. I was having a lot of ovarian pain in my lower abdomen, but I'd also had endometriosis, so I knew that.
This doesn't really sound like a doctory thing to say that.
Yes, he said ovaries don't cause pain. That is a fantasy. And I was like, check please. Right. I am out of here. And it turned out I had a hemorrhagic cyst. Ovarian hemorrhagic cyst, which lasted 6 months, which is why I was in so much pain. But for my ovaries that don't hurt. And I went to go find a really good doctor, and the way I found that was I started reading online. This girl, Dana Parrish, has written some really nice articles about Lyme for the Huffington Post. So I looked to see which doctors were recommended in these articles, and I found a doctor in Connecticut named Dr. Stephen Phillips, and he took my case, and I've been working with him, but look, we're not where I need to be. I've had some results, had some popping in my ankle. It was painful and popping. That actually went away with my first course of doxycycline. After that, we switched to tetracycline, but got rid of that. Other things that cleared up are more minimal. So look, once Lyme goes longer than like a month to a year, it's harder and harder to treat. So you get more into a stage of management and wanting to prevent further progression, right? So that's kind of where we are. We're hoping to see more results, but I'm trying different combinations of antibiotics at this time. We do pulses, 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off, or 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. I've been on antifungals, I've been on anti-malarial, been on several different types of antibiotics.
How long was your first run of doxycycline?
I was on it for 6 weeks. Okay. And I also do now, I get a lot of muscle spasms, but again, we don't know, is this EDS or is this Lyme? Because they're very similar. Because Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is a collagen dysfunction, that weakens connective tissue. So a lot of times my muscles stay in spasm to try to do the job that my connective tissue will not do.
Okay.
Right? But then muscle pain is also a symptom of,
Yeah.
Lyme,
Yeah.
Bartonella, Babesia, ehrlichiosis. Like, there's so many things.
Right.
So I was like, well, what's going on? So, so I started doing IVs with magnesium because the muscle spasms are so intense. Like, at night, it feels like someone is breaking my leg in half. So I get these really intense knee spasms, chest spasms, ankle spasms.
Would that include, just out of ignorance, I guess, would that include involuntary movement?
No, I don't usually get movement. I cannot move my leg because it hurts so much. I am going to die. The first time it happened, I didn't know what was happening.
Right.
And we didn't know, like, what's going on with my leg? And, my husband, like, moved it just a little bit. I'm like, ow, 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 don't touch it. And then I willed myself to move my leg a little bit, and then it stopped. But getting it to just move a little bit to get it out of spasm is so horrifying.
Jeez.
Yeah, so, but I'm dealing with pain like that. I mean, it's crazy. So, but why do I have such a magnesium depletion that it's causing these kinds of muscle spasms, right? I mean, why isn't my body holding on to that magnesium? Most people don't experience that. So why is that happening? Is this, is this Lyme? I tested positive for Lyme and Bartonella. So those are what I'm dealing with. So we don't know. We don't know
Yeah,
yet.
that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
From that point, so you mentioned that it gets to the point where you're just trying to manage.
Mm-hmm.
And has from that point, has anything improved, or has it just been a plateau?
Since March, since I started treatment, you mean?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Well, I was having this. So yes, there's some. I started to have odd progression of like visual disturbances. So it was hard for me to read because I couldn't look at it correctly. But if I went to the neuro-ophthalmologist and the eye doctor, they're like, "No, you're fine. You have almost perfect vision, but why can't I see?" And that actually relented in September, and then just came back last week. So there's some kind of thing that Lyme will do to vision. So I'm sure that's Lyme and not EDS. That part. Also, years ago, I was having really bad problems with interstitial cystitis, and come to find out, Lyme loves bladder collagen. So that could have been why that was happening to me, but also because I have collagen dysfunction. Also, collagen in the bladder, we don't know if it was a hypermobile thing, because it starts spasming because your tissues aren't doing what they should, so everything's kind of affected. But we did figure that out with pelvic floor therapy, and we were able to calm it down. But it's super common in people with Lyme or similar vector-borne illness to get something like interstitial cystitis. So again, it's so hard to know. What is it?
Right. Jeez.
Mm-hmm. It's very complicated.
Like when I first started, figuring it out, I Googled it, learn what you can, because I wasn't trusting the doctors I was dealing with at the time.
Yeah.
And when you get past, like for me, it was getting past the wall of how horrifying it is. Just to being able to read it and compartmentalize enough to say, you need this information, just deal with it.
Yeah.
So the list of symptoms is this, might as well just say everything. And it had been until after had been said that I had it and was going through it that, like you were saying about like symptoms that came later, was when a tinnitus just kicked in. Out of nowhere, literally, I'm sitting watching TV, and I don't like blast it. I'm just watching TV, and all of a sudden it's like literally like a ping that just never stopped.
Wow.
It was a ping, and that I feel like at times we all experience this ringing that lasts for like a few seconds and then fades.
Yep.
So I'm like, oh, fade.
And it didn't.
And it wasn't.
Wow.
And that was for me, like I just finished getting over like the physical like knees and ankles and physical pain, but now here's this thing that doesn't physically hurt, but it's maddening.
Yes.
And
Yeah, anyone who has like an odd progression of symptoms, like you're talking about, should get evaluated. Like, you have these parents that's like all of a sudden their kid's suicidal, has never acted this way before. Then, they're having seizure or they're having, pain. But like, this is not this kid. And, they have found so many like neuropsychiatric reasons that are Lyme related, right?
Really?
Yeah, so you treat the Lyme, your kid's not going to want to kill themselves anymore. They have found Lyme to be the cause in eating disorders.
Wow.
So there's so much evidence and research that has happened into how it's affecting people psychologically. We're not having a big enough discussion about it, or it's not a public enough announcement, or there's not enough public interest. I don't even know, but I know if my kid had any kind of weird pain or anxiety or depression or eating disorder, and I could just go get some lab work for not necessarily Lyme, because Lyme is hard, but there's so many other tests you can get for Bartonella, Toxoplasma, Anaplasma, Ehrlichiosis, Babesia. I would start looking at those, and if any of those came up positive, I'd start treating with antibiotic. And if there is Lyme involved and there is a psychiatric component, you would know. But why wouldn't you take that chance?
Yeah. Yeah, and then so now that's something that even with what I've gone through that I've never even heard, that it can have neurological effects as well. Mm-hmm. So that's
big time.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah, I mean, there's neurological Lyme. There's also Lyme carditis. If you know people with like arrhythmias. I don't know if you're familiar with the doctor. His name's Dr. Neil Spector, but he wrote a book called Gone in a Heartbeat. And he was living in Miami. He's a cancer. He's a top oncologist. Mm-hmm. He was having pain in his wrists and some other issues, but no one would Lyme test him. No one. So finally, I think he was like in Massachusetts or something, and someone finally did do a test on him. Turns out he had Lyme, but at the same time, he was getting a heart transplant. He could have saved himself the heart transplant if someone had just treated him for Lyme initially. Mm. I mean, that is shocking, right? Yeah. And my doctor, same thing. His dad was up for a heart transplant. My doctor had gone to Yale. He had done a little bit of research into Lyme. He didn't really understand why it was so messy and misunderstood. His father, like I said, he's on the list for a heart transplant. He says, "Hey, Dad, you want to try an antibiotic? Maybe it's Lyme." They couldn't remember bug bite or any of these things. But hey, Dad, just on a hunch, let's try this.
Right.
Dad said, okay. Didn't have to have a heart transplant. It was Lyme carditis.
Man.
So, I mean, that's serious.
Show, yeah.
Yeah. But a lot of people are out there on a heart transplant list. Has that been investigated? Did anyone really look at Lyme, or did they just run kind of a crappy test and go, you only have one band, it's negative, or it didn't show up here, you must be negative. Yeah. And we're killing people. We are actually killing people by not investigating this.
Even doctors are quick to say, well, you aren't in a location where there are ticks, so it can't possibly be that. And it just seems like what you're telling me and just what I hear, and it's so quickly brushed to the side, like so quickly, that it's almost curiously, like, why dismiss it so quick,
Seems really odd to me, what's the name of that theory where it's like the most common cause of something is most likely the cause? I can't remember what they call it. It's got like a fancy name. It's like someone's theory. But if you think about it, your environment is going to be the biggest culprit, right? And maybe your genetic profile, maybe that would be first. But second is going to be your environment. So if you are sick, just talking about chronic illness in general, if you are sick, you need to look around your house. Do you have fragrance in your house? There's a ton of neurotoxins in that, cause all kinds of neurological problems. So do you have candles? Do you have fragrance sticks? The other thing, new carpet, car fresheners, all of those things can cause lots of problems for people. So you're looking at environment. What else is in your environment? Dust, mold. People may think they have Lyme. It could be mold illness. So, you have to look at both.
Right.
That's very important. If you've been around a moldy area, make sure you get mold remediation because it will present as Lyme, and you could be treated for Lyme and not get better because it's actually mold. You can have a positive Lyme test but not be symptomatic, right? It's like cancer. You might have some cancer cells in your body. Doesn't mean you're sick with cancer.
Right.
You know, you can have Lyme in your body. Doesn't mean you're sick with Lyme. You may be. Did your immune function support it or not? You know, so you have to find that's really important. But you know, what's in your environment? Bugs, pets, your foods, what do you consume? You should look at all of those things and then you start building out. And then if you're not getting answers from any of those things, then start looking other places. But you really have to take the closest look at yourself and what's around you first, you know. Also, have you traveled? You know, they say, oh, well, there's no ticks, there's no Lyme in Australia. Do you know people in Australia cannot get help? They cannot be treated for Lyme disease. They have decided there is no Lyme in Australia, and if you're a doctor treating it, you're like, you know, you're a criminal, and they will take away your license.
Really?
Which is crazy because I'm pretty sure people go on airplanes to places, even, let's just say, Australia has no Lyme. Okay, just for the sake of argument.
Right.
Why would you allow your people to come back to Australia sick and not be able to get help?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's like a crime against humanity. Like, that makes me so sick. People are literally dying in Australia because they do have Lyme carditis, or they're, you know, suffering with a major seizure disorder, all Lyme related, and unable to get help. Or, you know, gastroparesis is a big one. You know, their stomachs aren't working, they're unable to void. People get urinary paralysis from Lyme. Like, the list is so extensive of the terrible things that can happen. And when you just go to a doctor for a diagnosis, they will diagnose your symptom, give you a medication or perhaps a surgery, but they will never say, what caused this? Let's find the root and let's fix that. They rarely do that.
Yes.
But yes, so ticks are everywhere.
Right.
Lyme disease is everywhere on every continent in every state in the United States. There is no, I mean, you can Google it. I suggest everyone never take my word for anything.
Right.
Do your own research. Google it. But yes, Lyme is everywhere. That's the most ridiculous thing. They say, oh, we don't have Lyme here. What do you mean you don't have Lyme here? I've left my house. Other people have left their house and come here.
Right.
You know, a bug can get in a suitcase. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's so stupid.
Yeah, no, I would have never, like, it's weird to even just say that, like, this whole continent,
Nope, we don't have
We're
it.
good.
And why are they so defensive? You know what I mean? Why are they so adamant that even a doctor can't treat it? Or in California, I know people that are like, well, no, we've been told we can't have Lyme because there's no Lyme in this area, even though they have a chronic tick problem in their apartment or house, right? There's someone I've spoken to like that. And I said, well, that's not a thing. Lyme's everywhere. Your county can't tell you there is no Lyme. That's ridiculous. And, you know, but that's what these people do. I mean, honestly, it just like, that is really just wrong. I mean, you are killing people. It's like, there's like no accountability for that. I don't really understand it. And this is the whole thing. This was another argument you would hear. Over-treatment of Lyme or over-treating Lyme. How are you over-treating a sick person? Right? If you are sick and not getting better, how are you over-treating that person? Mm-hmm. Don't you treat until results are better?
Right? That's what would make sense. I
mean, the Hippocratic Oath is to, you know, basically help, not hurt, right? Mm-hmm. But if I am sick and I'm constantly sick and I'm just getting worse and I have an odd progression of symptoms that really make no sense at all, why are you telling me I can't have an antibiotic? If I had acne, you would give me an antibiotic.
Yeah.
But because I have joint pain, muscle pain, some anxiety that I didn't have before, depression maybe, I'm having these weird feelings when I pee and my bladder doesn't feel right, you're not going to put that together in any way that you'll allow me to have an antibiotic? I mean, but that's what's been happening to people. And I'm hoping that we're at a point where that's going to start changing. I know in Maine, they had a lot of people who were sick. Maine's very notorious Lyme country. And they had a lot of people coming back with these negative Lyme tests, but they were still sick. And they were like, why? Why is this happening? So they started testing for Bartonella, Babesia, or Ehrlichiosis. I don't know, some of the other, what they call co-infections. And let me just say, co-infections does not mean you have Lyme. They see a lot of co-infections in people that have Lyme. The two are not exclusive, and they're totally different manifestations, right? Lyme and Bartonella are not the same thing. You can have Bartonella without having Lyme. But so they started testing for that. People started coming up positive. Then they could treat, because the standards were they cannot treat if they didn't have a positive test, even though they knew these people were sick. So they had to find a way to treat them. And so they started investigating all these other tests. And after you and I talk, I will post all the lab work people should have done. If they ever have any kind of weird illness, these are the labs you should be asking your doctor for.
Okay.
You know, and none of it is invasive. You can get it done at LabCorp. You know, it's not like, except for Bartonella. Bartonella testing has to be cultured. There's a lab called Galaxy DX. I think they're in North Carolina. And they culture the Bartonella. That's the only real way to find out if you're positive for Bartonella. LabCorp doesn't do it. They'll run the test. It means nothing. They actually don't do it correctly. Stony Brook has great Lyme testing for Western blot. You know, if someone does want to go that way. But so many of these illnesses that we're getting from ticks, fleas, lice, spiders, horseflies, are not necessarily Lyme, but they're, you know, from a flea, you know, there's like 12 different types of Bartonella. You know, you can ask your veterinarian, you know, your dog will get Bartonella and he'll treat for it. Your veterinarian can get Bartonella, but does the vet ever tell you, hey, you haven't been feeling well? We should check you for Bartonella. Look, if your dog can have it, you can have it.
Yeah, especially with what people are doing with their dogs now.
Right.
It's more possible than ever.
Yeah, but I was reading the American Journal or the Veterinarian American Journal, whatever, their journal for veterinarians. And this is like the big time rise, you know, the occupational hazard of being a veterinarian is Bartonella. Because you can get, you know, it's all different ones, you know, from a rabbit, it's a, you know, a rabbit flea, you know, a dog flea, cat flea, rat flea. They all carry different types of Bartonella. But, you know, you think about the Zika virus, that's a mosquito. There's a whole bunch of other stuff you can get from a mosquito that isn't Zika, that no one talks about, but affects way more people than the 10 people that, you know, Zika affects. I mean, granted, it's more than 10, but you know what I'm saying. We hear more about something that doesn't happen very often than we do about the things that can happen a whole lot, but we have become, I don't know, we think because we're a first world country that these things don't happen to us. You know, parasites don't happen, bug-borne illness doesn't happen. But let me just tell you, it happens everywhere.
Yeah, and especially among people who do a lot of traveling. You don't know what you may come back with.
Yep.
That isn't a normal thing here, and then therefore it could be overlooked.
Yeah, exposure, look, exposure is exposure, right? We are way more transient than we used to be. We travel more, we see more, we, you know, everyone's Instagram account wants the remote island in Borneo somewhere where, you know, you can catch who knows what. But, you know, I was just reading in China, you know, they had a case of bubonic plague and bubonic plague. And, you know, but these cases do happen occasionally around the world and even in the United States. Again, though, that's a flea bite from a rat to a person.
Right.
Not uncommon.
No.
You know, we live in New York City. Where are the rats? They're friggin' everywhere. You know, you think that flea can't bite you? Of course it can. You know, it's scary. But, I mean, I guess, you know, that's the weird thing about this Lyme diagnosis is it's, like, opened my eyes. I feel like, oh, my God, how come I never even knew this?
Yeah.
You know, but bugs are everywhere and they carry bacteria and it's not uncommon and you should get checked if you have anything wrong with you. You know, you think about like there's the tick-borne illness, I never say this right, but it's like Powassan, I don't know, Powassun, I think it's spelled, but it will kill you, you know, and it's a tick bite. There's alpha-gal, which is also a tick bite, usually culminates in a meat allergy. If all of a sudden you're eating a hamburger and your nose is running, or eating some bacon, your nose is running, you probably got bit by a tick that carried alpha-gal. You know, but there's a lot of illnesses like that. Like, you know, I have some of these on my Instagram account that, you know, all these different types of things that just a tick can carry. And really, it's like fascinating because you go, what can a tick carry? Oh my God, that many things. I don't even know what they do. Like the list is endless. And then you just switch to another bug. You know, how many of those things, you know, so I just tell anyone, if you are having symptoms, Google those symptoms and try to line them up. You know, bug bite, you know, you could do bug bite, joint pain, see what comes up. Bug bite, migraine headache, see what comes up. Bug bite, my nose is running for no reason, see what comes up. Also, you know, people think, oh, I don't have Lyme disease because I only had one band come up. Okay, well, let's say you had one band come up, 2 bands, 3 bands, whatever it is. Google the band and see what those symptoms are because each band is different. Do your symptoms fall in that category? If so, I would investigate that diagnosis.
Yeah. And like for me, like so I'd been getting migraines since I was a teenager. But they were intensified once I was, you know, in the middle of Lyme land. You know what I mean? Like
it got worse.
The symptoms got worse, and they were always ocular migraines. So I would always get what they call the auras in the eyes. But when Lyme was happening to me, all that it just intensified. So where normally it would almost like the aura would not be too much more than a floater. And with the Lyme, I would turn into like Stevie Wonder, where it would just be huge, and like for about a half hour, I would just have to just like not do anything because I just could not. I thought this was on silent.
What is that?
That's my phone.
Oh.
Probably a telemarketer. So
that's hilarious. So I'm looking at this on this Bartonella. There's way more than 12. So we have like Bartonella from looks like sandfly vector, rabbit flea, cat flea, oriental rat flea, rodent flea, cat flea, sheep, body louse, fleas, mites, ticks. These are all different ones though, different carriers. Fleas, ticks unknown. This is from the white-footed mouse. Then there's coyote, which is usually by ticks. Like, I mean, but like this list of Bartonella is just crazy. You know, and things that these Bartonella can cause. So here's some of the symptoms: human or dog myocarditis, endocarditis; human or cat endocarditis; human bacteremia, fever, endocarditis; bacteremia. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Fever, trench fever, endocarditis. Most of them cause heart problems, but you know they also have a range of other things. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, that's fine.
Also, I don't know. If you've ever met people that have like a throat problem, the dysphonia where they have a hard time speaking. That is often Lyme, but usually not investigated. Like I was going through Instagram, this girl's like in Switzerland getting needles put in her throat. Never does it say anywhere that she's had any kind of, vector-borne, zoonotic, or parasitic illness investigated, right? Instead, they're just trying to treat a symptom. You have someone like Shania Twain who experienced terrible dysphonia. Can you imagine? You sing for a living.
Right.
And she couldn't get her voice to go right. She had Lyme. So, these are very, very common. So here it is. Black-legged ticks can carry anaplasmosis, Lyme disease, Borrelia, myomatoid, babesiosis, which is a parasite, Powassan, and other related tick-borne encephalitis viruses. Wood ticks can transmit Colorado tick fever, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and tularemia. A brown dog tick can also transmit Rocky Mountain spotted fever. So like you think about this, right? Like that is a lot of things. And signs of like Powassan virus is fever, headache, vomiting, weakness, confusion, loss of coordination with difficult walking and talking, speech difficulties, memory problems. But if you went in there, how many times would a doctor come up with that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's so crazy. And it says, ticks become infected when they feed on groundhogs, squirrels, mice, and other rodents that have the virus in their blood. Infected ticks can then spread Powassan virus to people and other animals by biting them. People do not develop high enough levels of the virus in their blood to infect biting ticks. As a result, people are considered dead-end hosts for the virus. So, it's not going to bite you, and then give it to something else, but it can give you the disease.
Right.
You know. And,
So in other words, it's not contagious among humans.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. It's not going to bite you and then be able to give it. But if it's the same bug, it can bite more than one person and infect more than one person. But that was from the CDC website. But honestly, they say, and also from Forbes.com, you know, I get several sources. You know, I don't believe anyone. So when I start Googling stuff, you know, and this is also from medicinenet.com, like I look at everything because I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to be, have the wrong information. So I really try to check to make sure I have the right information for myself. Otherwise, I'm living a lie, right? And I did that for too long. So now my eyes are wide open.
Right. And what you've done pretty much now, like you've almost transformed your Instagram page into just so much information. And I don't say that like as a joke. You know, it's true.
No, it's a lot. Yeah, no, I go down a medical rabbit hole and I try to find whatever might be relevant to someone. Even if it's not relevant to me, like I care more about other people being sick than I do about my own illness, which it can be a problem for me because I spend a lot of time trying to figure out how someone else can be helped or what have they missed or what is going on, that I will not pay attention to my own health. I had a collapsed lung in August, and I'm not kidding you. I was sitting there getting the x-ray. I could barely breathe, and I was answering an email about Lyme, who someone doesn't want to get investigated and keeps telling me, like, it's been several months of back and forth. I'm like, just get checked. Just get checked. Why wouldn't you just get checked?
Right.
She's having all kinds of health problems. Now she's got a heart problem. Now she's, you know, her stomach's not working. Now and she's got pain. Like, and now she's got anxiety. And now she's got, I'm like, why wouldn't you look? Just look. Just investigate this, please. So it was like one of those where I've already spent a lot of time, you know, they're asking me questions. I'm responding, very thoughtful. I'm very lengthy. And I'm sitting there. I can't breathe. I'm literally going like this. And I'm starting to email back. And I was like, what am I doing?
Right.
And I just stopped. I was like, I've given them all the information. It is up to them to investigate. I cannot make anybody do anything they don't want to do. Even though I want to save them, I can't save them. And, you know, that's what happens. But yes, I have a lot of information on my Instagram, and not as much as I want, because I'm like, I'm voracious when it comes to medical information. So, you know, I want to read it, and I want to share it, and I want to tell everyone about it, and I want to explain it, and I want you to get better. And I really have to slow down because my hands don't support the veracity of which I would like to share it and, you know, and help people. So I have had to take some time. I was on a trip and then I came back, and because I need to let my wrists rest, I haven't been back on Instagram in a little bit, but I still have lots of information there and will continue to add information very soon. But I did need a rest, and that is part of me ignoring my own health and pain because I feel like other people, you know, need help. Right. It's that part is my sickness. I don't have the on-stage sickness where I need a lot of feedback and clapping. Right. I do need to know that maybe I could help someone. So
one other thing about Lyme that I wanted to touch on, just sort of discuss it with you, is one thing that I learned through internet research and through other people who had been through it, and that I didn't know going in, is that Lyme disease is either 100% or somewhat of a man-made illness.
Oh, you're talking about the biological warfare.
Right.
Plum Island.
Yeah, and now there was, I believe, Lyme, Connecticut is a place.
Yes,
and it was where the first...
That's why they call it Lyme, Connecticut. Yeah, that's why they call it Lyme, because in Lyme, Connecticut was the first diagnosed case of Lyme.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I do know about Plum Island. I know that I think the Pentagon did open an investigation onto whether Lyme was used as biological warfare. I know that there's some speculation. I don't know if it's speculation or actual solid research. That's why I always say Google everything.
Right.
But they, in the Gulf War, they were coming back with Lyme, which makes you wonder how in the Gulf War were they getting Lyme disease? They certainly weren't in Connecticut. Right. So was it being used as biological warfare there that backfired? But you know that whole Lyme creation and biological warfare. I mean, it goes back several decades.
World War II.
Yeah. So it's interesting. But yes, you can see where if someone's creating something like that, how look, you get one bug that escapes.
Yeah.
It can be a problem. It's like a horror movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super scary. I don't know, I think we are just in a big state of denial. I don't think it's conspiracy theory so much. I mean, it does feel like a conspiracy, but I think it's denial. I think it's either doctors did not learn about it, doctors weren't curious about it, they were told it was one thing and they just accepted it, and that's also, though, I'm a very firm believer in what I call medical empowerment, right? Mm-hmm. Like, if you aren't getting what you need from your doctor, you need to ask for it. And if that doctor doesn't give it to you, I know it's a pain in the ass and it is exhausting, especially when you don't feel well, but you need to ask another doctor about it. Mm-hmm. And if you aren't asking for things that will help you, whether that's an anti-inflammatory, testing, whatever it is that you need help with, supplementation, maybe you want to look at your nutrition, you need to ask for testing for that, hormonal testing, whatever it is, but it is up to you, because we think our doctor should do that. Your doctor is not going to do it. Your doctor has about 15 minutes. He's not going to investigate you, right? If he can't figure it out in 2 minutes and put you into a category that's comfortable for him, it's not going to happen. So you have to be your own doctor. And it is hard, but you have to do it, because otherwise you are sitting at home like me for the last 10 years, and you probably could have been getting better, and maybe you could have gone back to work, and instead you've been on a couch.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the honest to God truth. Who do I have to blame now? I only have myself to blame, because I wasn't curious enough to look. I believed my doctor, and that was a mistake. And my doctor doesn't owe me. I owe me. Right? You owe you. Right. It is your health. Your doctor doesn't go home and have to sit in that body. Yeah. You do. It is up to us.
And that is, like, going through it, that is a tough lesson to learn.
Oh, it's horrible. Yeah. I understand that doesn't sound compassionate or loving or whatever, but I don't really care about that. That is the truth, and the only thing that's going to help you is the truth. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's true. If someone being nice to you doesn't get you better. Right. And it is unfortunate, but, I've had some very nice doctors, but they did not help me.
Right. So as we'll wrap up soon, so if maybe you can go into where are you at now with all this?
For me, I am on a fact-finding mission. I am trying to put together all the pieces, trying to figure out what's going to make me better. I met with a doctor the other day because I had some scars that were painful, and he did something called neural scar therapy, also called German acupuncture. Big in Europe since like the 40s or something. We don't use it a lot over here. I was curious about it. I went to go see him. He was actually very well-rounded. He even knew my doctors. He knew certain other methods I've used, so he was familiar. Not a lot of doctors are. You're telling them more. You leave the office saying, if you have any questions, call me, instead of the other way around. It happens a lot, which, it's good if they're open and curious and want to know about you, but I want the doctor telling me stuff, not the other way around. Mm-hmm. And so he was very good at that. And he said, he treated a scar, and then he said, you're treating everything so locally, and it doesn't sound like you're getting better as a whole thing, and you're not doing very well. He said, we need to look at how we can make you feel overall better, instead of, making your hip feel better with, I'm getting, bupivacaine injections in either hip. I'm getting them in both sides of my neck because I have terrible, neurological, I have these, this nerve pain that's just awful, neuropathy, sorry, not neurological, neuropathy, and spasms, because the muscles have to go into spasm because the nerves are so screwed up, so your muscles protect you that way, but it's so painful. So that's happening in my back and my neck, and then I get these deep muscle treatments to get my muscles out of spasm, but they're very invasive. I'm under a sedation when it happens. I've had over 100 muscles treated from the top of my head to my feet, because my whole body is basically in spasm. So I'm doing a lot of things to try to manage this pain, but it's incremental. So I take these giant therapeutic, therapeutic undertaking, right? And I'm getting not very far. Mm-hmm. So we have to look at that. And he gave me some ideas of how to approach this going forward, which I was very happy about. But, you know, right now, I think where I am and what I'm able to do is hopefully create awareness of, you know, has your doctor looked at everything? Have you asked for the things your doctor hasn't thought of? And can you get better? If we start eliminating layers of illness, let's say you have a parasite you didn't know have. You could have something like strongyloides. It presents usually as childhood allergies, in adulthood a stomach blockage. Mostly you're going to go to an allergist, they're going to treat you for allergies. They're not going to look as to why. You've been carrying around strongyloides the whole time since you were a kid because you used to walk barefoot. It's a low-level parasite. But you can get a blood test and find out if you have strongyloides. When we remove that, are you going to feel a little bit better? You know, so to me, it's like, let's just remove those layers of illness. If you're getting IV infusion therapy of iron because you just keep being iron deficient, has the doctor looked again? There's a parasite causes same thing. You know, so, you know, you just do the test and let's see, for strongyloides, ivermectin, I think, is the remedy. For the, I'm trying to remember the name of the, it's not a ringworm. What is the name of the one that causes the iron deficiency? Well, anyways, you can Google it. But the iron deficiency, you know, again, I think it's a stool sample. And they treat it with antibiotic. And here's the other thing. People go, oh, antibiotics are bad. First of all, it was the antibiotics in the meat that became our enemy, right? They're the ones that became the problem. Avoid antibiotics in your meat. You're going to be on antibiotics very few times. It shouldn't be a problem. The other thing is, how much do you like feeling like crap? If you don't want to feel like crap, try the antibiotic. You know, otherwise, shut up. I mean, kind of, right? It's like, if you don't want to try, but there's also other kind of antibiotics, right? So, you know, there's antifungals, antibiotics like liposomal oregano. There are other things. So if you are totally adverse to a pharmaceutical antibiotic, even though it could make you well, I understand, but search out something that can help you. You know, I don't think I would be the type of person that would go on the IV antibiotics just because I don't want the undertaking. I also don't want a port put in. I think I'm too vulnerable to take that chance. I am the type of person that if it can go wrong, it will. So if it comes to that, I'm going to have to try to figure out a different way to get better, right? Let's see. Also, I think awareness that these things can happen is so important in any type of chronic illness management. You know, for me specifically, I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Hypermobility is the type that I have. There's several types of EDS. It is a genetic mutation. I do have the genetic support proof of that. Not everyone does. For hypermobility, they say they can't find the gene. This is an interesting story too. So just real quick. So I have something called the TNXB gene, which is tenacin X, which has to do with like muscle fibers, which you know, it's collagen, right? Basically, it's they don't do their job. I think they call them fibrocils. So because it's not doing that, that explains my hypermobility problems. And they say only 5% of the EDS patients have this TNXB gene of the hypermobility patients. But what's interesting, they say only 5% of the population has EDS, and then so that means I'd be 5% of the 5%. Okay. So hypermobility is diagnosed a lot, and it doesn't always mean it's Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. There's lots of reasons for hypermobility. It could be bacterial, like Lyme, for example, or Bartonella, some of these other bug-borne illnesses, vector-borne illnesses, can eat away things like connective tissue, cartilage, which is another thing. Like I don't have a lot of cartilage in my knees. Why? Is it EDS or is it Lyme? We don't know. Which is one of the reasons I have such bad spasms in the muscles is because the cartilage isn't there in the knees. So I get the injections, and you know, you can trigger cartilage to regrow if it's stimulated, which hopefully will do that by having the injections and stimulating it a little bit. But people who do get well from different vector-borne illness that did eat their cartilage, it will start to come back once treated. So now hypermobility, it happens in a lot of people's hips. Parents have contacted me, adults have contacted me, you know, where they were diagnosed with hypermobility in an area. Happened to be because of Lyme disease, not because they had hypermobility syndrome or Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, but it presents as that.
Right.
So it's very confusing because you have a lot of people out there that I have a hunch are getting diagnosed as hypermobile EDS, but actually have a bacterial reason, and they are not treating the bacteria, so they're going to have further deterioration of the joints and further health complications because everything is collagen. So I wonder, and this is my weird couch scientist theory, right? Because I'm not a real scientist or doctor. But what if the TNXB gene is the end of the story? Maybe that is the hypermobile gene they keep looking for, but they keep saying, oh, we don't know the gene that causes hypermobility, and they're trying to find it. They have a geneticist looking for it who's never actually found any Ehlers-Danlos genes that I'm aware of. I know a genetic researcher that found, I think, 2 of the EDS genes, and they, for some reason, did not ask him to try to locate the hypermobility EDS gene, even though he said he can do it in less time and for less money, and we're at over a year now and over $1 million of them trying to find it. He said he could probably do it in 6 months for about $500,000. Makes me crazy to be part of a group of people who I don't feel like are serving the group of people they're supposed to be serving. I'm not sure who they're serving, probably themselves, as any corporate-run charity type of foundation is. Anyways, that's a whole nother conversation. But you have these EDS diagnoses coming up, sort of like illness du jour, right? Fibromyalgia. Everything used to be fibromyalgia. Remember, everything, it's always something, right? And so you have people like Lena Dunham, Sia, all of a sudden saying that they have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. But do they? Or do they have a bacterial reason for a hypermobility or pain problem? And I don't know. But if you are not investigated, even though you can be very positive that that diagnosis sounds right, if you have not made sure that you do not have a parasitic, zoonotic, or vector-borne reason for it, you are doing a disservice to yourself, and maybe you are sick and you don't have to be. Or maybe you won't be as sick. But I keep seeing over and over and over these terrible progression, among girls, guys, young into adulthood, but children too, where they are functioning at such a low level and so young. It's like you're missing out on so much life. And maybe if someone looked at this, we could remove some of that and maybe they will get better. But until you look at everything and look under all stones, it's, the story hasn't been written for you yet. You still have a chance. So I don't know. To me, you just have to keep looking. You cannot just accept a diagnosis and then start patching it with pills to manage symptoms. I just don't think that's the way we should go. I think that is almost like accepting death. That's how it feels to me.
Man, and just based on hearing your story through this, and then knowing what I went through is, you say just getting pills thrown at you is what, I got like intense pain pills thrown at me.
Yeah, right. Although they got no problem giving you an opiate, but not an antibiotic.
Right.
They'll give you opiates, but they're not going to run a Lyme test for you.
Right. And that's a good point, because up by me, huge opiate problem.
I think it's like 1 in 5, like opiate addiction. They put me on opiates after I was in a really bad car accident. I mean, traumatic brain injury, broken pelvis. It was bad, but there was no information. They just give you that hydrocodone and some muscle relaxers, and they're like, take 4 a day. And I did. And I was like, I am not feeling better. I am still in pain. I'm just not going to take these anymore. And I'm one of the lucky ones. Now looking back on it, I'm like, oh my God, there was no awareness whatsoever, about opiates or the damage they could do. Now we know a lot, and we know exactly what those pills are called. At that time, we did not. And I think what Russian roulette they were playing with my life. And what Russian roulette they are playing with so many people's lives, but they won't investigate an illness. They won't give you an antibiotic. They won't try to find out if an anti-malarial will help you or an antifungal, but we will give you an opiate. And then what do they want? Well, you're going to be on an opiate, but then they say you can't be on it too long, right? You're not, so then what are we going to fix with the opiate? Like, what are we doing? Okay, great. What now?
Right.
What's your plan, doctor?
Right.
You're giving me some pain meds, and then what? You just hope I'm not in pain in a few months
Either
when you
it'll
decide
go-
to stop giving them to me?
Exactly.
Is that what's going to happen? It doesn't make any sense. Yeah,
Maybe it'll go.
don't get me started on opiates.
Yeah. No, it's true though, and I feel like the period or the exclamation point of all this, I've learned a lot about EDS here, which I didn't know much about. That Lyme, all these different things, is so now if I didn't know you from nobody, I'm just sitting across from you. You appear fine.
I appear fine.
I hope. I don't mean that as
no.
as
I'm glad you brought that up because there is a whole community, and our hashtag is "But you don't look sick." Right. Because we don't look sick, and there's really nothing worse you can say to someone who's suffering than "But you look fine."
Right.
I mean, not that you were saying that, but I'm just saying,
Right.
Because then that person feels like now they have to try to defend it, explain it, and they don't need to do that. Although I always take those opportunities as a learning moment, and I can see people start to glaze over and sorry they asked, but it's like, you know what? So this was my week. This is what I did.
Yeah.
This is why. This is how I'm sick. Because now I feel like that's an opportunity for me to educate someone because maybe it will help someone else along the line, right? And but there is that whole thing. Yes, you don't look sick, but no one knows that I was just in China and Japan using a wheelchair. I look fine. I can't use a cane. Like there's this picture of Lena Dunham using a cane because of her EDS. I'm like, well, she must have the good EDS because I can't use a cane because my wrist hurts.
Right.
Yeah, I have such bad wrist and shoulder pain. And there's these muscle treatments I get. You have to use a cane with it. My foot was in spasm for a year before I could get well enough to use a cane for 3 days. So I mean, that is the type of like constant physical assault I'm under. But yes, I do. I look okay.
Right. To someone who did not know you, just a stranger on the street.
Yeah.
And I think that's when I went through my Lyme thing, I didn't look much different.
Yeah.
Especially when I was sitting trying to walk around.
Yeah.
It was a different story.
Right. When you're trying to figure out how many steps to take, that's the part people don't see. How many steps is it going to take me to get from here to where I need to go? Will I be able to take a cab? Will I be able to get to a bus? I don't know. Maybe the bus is too far for me to walk. I could hurt my hip doing that. And what if by the time the bus drops me off, I'm having some other kind of pain? Like everything is like this constant management of physical exertion.
Yeah.
It is like this weird math problem that you're constantly figuring out versus energy, physical strength, physical pain, emotional pain, anxiety. It's like you're managing those all the time. Your mind is very busy when you are managing a chronic illness.
Yeah. And I started, so like with me it was mostly in the joints and knees and ankles. And but it did start towards the end before it started to improve. It did creep into my wrists. Mm-hmm. Now, I draw or paint every single day.
Yeah.
And if talk about things psychologically, like if I don't get that in, I don't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't get that little outlet every day.
Yes.
And I do like a lot of, just not to get technical, but like a lot of cross hatching, a lot of stippling, a lot of stuff that takes the wrist to do in terms of visual art. And I started noticing myself like stopping and every so often to just kind of do the stretch and the whole bit. And those periods in which I would stop got closer and closer and closer together to the point where it's like, well, I'm not, look, you can take whatever you want, but you're not taking this ability away from me.
Yeah.
And
it will take it though.
I ended up, which worked for me, it doesn't work for everybody, but I ended up going to the store and getting those things that you squeeze.
Oh, that helped you?
And it did help to a degree, yeah.
I have wrist guard because it got so bad that now I wear these a lot on the right hand and left hand, but it's a hard plastic, I immobilize because using it makes it hurt. And to the point where like I can't chop vegetables. I can't brush my hair sometimes. I can't wash my hair sometimes. I have an actually thing in my shower to help me wash my hair because making that grip, doing that is so painful. But I was doing hair. I depended on my hands. My hands have done so much for me in life. Right. Not to be able to use them. My shoulders hurt. I can't. I never blow out my hair. I'm a hairstylist. I don't do my hair because it hurts my shoulder. Like it's really crazy, and it's like. It's like living in some kind of weird prison. You know, because it doesn't look like you're in prison, but you can't get out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, no one can see that you're in a jail cell, but you are actually in one, because you can't just go out and do things like normal people would do. And the thing is, I haven't committed a crime. I don't deserve that prison.
Right.
You know, I didn't do anything to be here. At least a prisoner knows why they're there.
Right. Every activity needs to be presupposed. Like, as you were saying, talk about getting places. But even, like, I catch myself in the mindset of, okay, Albert, you'll get there. But how are you going to feel when you get there? What's that going to, you know, are you going to have to endure being somewhere and being sick?
Yeah.
You know, and I've caught myself with this balance of either, you know, am I going to stay home and, like, quote unquote rot?
Yeah, I know.
Or am I going to try to push myself to get out there and then end up being somewhere away from home?
Yeah, and in pain and agony.
In pain, agony, nausea. I got a lot of nausea. And not have the tools to ease it when you're out.
Yep.
So, yeah.
No, I feel you.
I
have the nausea and the migraine, and, you know, I have all the, you know, I have a cabinet full of pills. But why? Why do I have these things? You know, but you're talking about that, like, this is just an extreme, just really tells a story. Like, sometimes I have to hold my pee so long so that I don't have to make extra trips to the bathroom, because, you know, we have a long hallway in this apartment.
Right.
Sometimes that's too much for my ankles. Like, people don't think about, like, I have to manage how many trips I make back to the bedroom, like, or I start carrying things with me. I'm like, well, I'll just bring it all at one time.
Right.
You know, I put everything in a bag or something because I can't make multiple trips. Or doing the laundry is excruciating for me because it's so much back and forth through the laundry machine, right? Sometimes my ankles can't do that. And so then the laundry will pile up because I'm in so much pain. You know, but people don't think about that. It's like weird little things, like you're saying. Or if you're going to get to the movie, you think you're going to get right into the movie and buy the ticket. Oh my God, there's a line. I don't know if I can stand in the line because my hip is burning already because I had to walk an extra block that I didn't plan on walking just to get here because the cab couldn't get close enough. Like, whatever. And, you know, I know you live in Pennsylvania. It's a little different. You probably drive a car and pull up to where you need to be. But in New York, you are so dependent on whatever is happening in the city right then.
Right.
You know, and I have found so much... I guess people just don't understand. They don't have compassion or empathy. But it will tell people, you know, can you help me? I'm in a lot of pain. I'm not going to be able to walk. Like, they'll be like, oh, you got to walk around. It's, you know, you got to go down the avenue and around the block. But I'm like, but there's an entrance right here. And this is where the cab dropped me off so that I could walk less. And I thought this was your front door. Right. And they're like, sorry, can't let you in. You're like, but I can't walk around. So I'm going to have to go get in another cab and drive around to get to the entrance that you're telling me to get to. Are you saying that's what I have to do? But you could just let me in?
Right.
Like, really? Like, sorry. I'm like, okay, great. But they're so mean. You know, in 14th Street, they blocked off 6 avenues from like 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. or whatever it is. And people were so furious. Right? They were like, well, it's just made for rich people that can drive down the street and, you know, it's not helping the people who need to get to work. First of all, able-bodied people on 14th Street, they have 3 choices. They can walk, they can take a bus, or they can take the train. Right? There's a train that goes 14th, clear under there. So you have 3 ways to get there. If you have a broken leg, maybe your feet just hurt and you just can't do the walk today, or you have mobility problems, right? Whether that's a wheelchair or a hip problem like myself or ankle knee problem like sometimes I have. I mean, whatever it is, whatever's ailing you, right? You're having mobility problems. You cannot take a cab and get dropped off now because some people decided that was for rich people. No, no, that's not for rich people. That's so people can get there. People who wouldn't necessarily be able to get there any other way. And then you have, you know, cabs cost so much money. I mean, you know, some of us are fortunate enough, we can afford the cabs. We don't have to really think about it. Right. But there's a lot of people who can't. And why are they being penalized trying to get from point A to point B, but they don't have the luxury of physical health to take a subway or a bus? Like, it is so crazy making. Even the way they have, you have to stand out here to get a cab. You have to actually stand in the middle of traffic because they've made the bike lane, the turn lane, I mean, and the parking lane, right? So you usually just stand in the middle of the road to try to catch a cab. I'm like, well, if I wasn't injured before,
Right.
I will be injured when the car hits me.
Yeah.
Like they have no real understanding of how hard it is to get around in a city that is not made for people who are not healthy, and it starts to feel like discrimination. I know I've written plenty of letters to like the mayor's office and New York One. No one seems to even care. Even the disabilities office here, I've tried to contact, and I've never heard back from them. But, you know, just the fact that all these lanes are closed too, it takes so long for me to get where I'm going because I have to make sure I'm dropped off as close as possible.
Right.
Because I'm in too much pain to take any extra steps. But sometimes when they have these lanes closed, like on 5th Avenue, there's nobody in the bus lanes, there are no buses, but we can't drive there, and we're sitting in traffic, polluting, not only mention just the environmental cost, you know, but I'm stuck. I don't get to get out of the cab and then try to hoof it to the doctor's office I'm going to. Anyway, I know, it's just hard. Everything feels like an assault. You leave the house and it's like a landmine. What's going to go wrong? If someone has a car freshener in the car, I've now developed this like extreme chemical sensitivity. I get a vestibular disturbance. And I don't mean like I dislike your car freshener, your black death smelling car freshener. But I actually get a physical response where I become nauseous, dizzy, and confused. Like, that's not normal, and I'm sure that's Lyme. But a lot of people with vestibular disturbance are like, oh, I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I'm like, but what is the mechanism causing that? There is not a mechanism. Right. So we can keep saying it's your EDS causing your postural orthostatic tachycardia syndromes, which I have, your mast cell activation syndrome. Many times that's Lyme. You start getting weird allergies, which I definitely have. I don't know if you've gotten any weird food allergies through all this?
I've not so much with the food allergies, but I went through a phase that comes and goes where my vision is very sensitive. And I went to an eye doctor. This is an old little Dr. Jem story. I'll keep it short though.
No.
Went to an eye doctor because I needed new glasses anyway. Go and he gives I told him I had floaters, which I
have those too. They're really annoying.
They are annoying. I try to ignore them, but sometimes
I know.
And then there are times for me when I'm like, because I can't at first distinguish, like, is this a floater or am I about to get a migraine?
Right.
Because the aura will start off like a pinpoint, like a floater, and then just keep growing. So I have to, and the stress of like, oh no, it's happening, could make it happen, so I have to combat that. So I go to the eye doctor, and he does x-rays and just makes sure there's no problems. Yeah, like a retinal detachment, because a lot of times floaters are actually a retinal detachment, so you want to make sure. So he did this cool 3D x-ray, and I got to look at my eyeballs on the screen, and it was all going great. And he said, is there anything else? And I said, well, Doc, I'll tell you, I'm going through this thing, this possible Lyme thing, and these other issues, and I told him the other issues, and I said, one thing that I've developed is this intense sensitivity of my eyes to light. Where if light sensitivity, that's a big one. So I keep my cell phone all the way down. My computer screen is almost all the way down, and it was never like that. And I gave him those examples, and I said, and also when I'm driving at night, I can see fine, but I notice that I'm way, way more sensitive to cars, oncoming traffic. And I said to him, before he had a chance to say it, I said, it's not these new kind of headlights. It's all headlights. Right, it's not that they're halogen. It's because, it's all headlights. And he turned or whatever it is. Xenon gas or whatever, Right. And this dude turned to me, and I thought he was kidding, and I started to laugh. And then I realized he's serious. He goes, well, just don't look at them. You're like, but that is not what I'm telling you. Let's find out why things are different. This is not how things used to be. Yeah. Just don't look at them. Don't look at the oncoming traffic. Thanks, Doc. Well, with my sore ankles, I just won't walk anymore either. How's that for a solution? Yeah. So I have to laugh about that one, but you have absolutely no interest in the human condition. What are you doing? Why are you here? So that was another thing that I and it's dissipated a little bit. And I could notice mainly because I can make the laptop or the phone brighter. I even dimmed my own television. All of it. It's so funny that you're saying this because, they ask you, are you light sensitive? And I have gone through the same thing where I, as well, have to keep my
brightness down on my phone, on my laptop, same thing. And I, just hearing you talk about it, I'm like, oh yeah, I do that. Right. But you get so used to doing things different and weirdly adapting to your environment that you forget that it's an actual thing you're experiencing that isn't normal.
Right.
That's the other weird thing about illnesses like this is the abnormal becomes so normal. You forget.
Yeah.
You forget it's a symptom of something you didn't have before.
You just get used to it. And
Yes.
that's also what happened with the tinnitus that I had. Is it was maddening and worrisome for about 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, it's crazy making.
yeah.
That's crazy making, truly.
And eventually, like, I went to the throat doctor and I got the hearing test, and I was given some. I didn't want to take medicine for it because the guy who gave me the hearing test was like, "You could take medicine for it, but you probably won't do much."
What even medicine can they give you for
There's
that?
like
I know there's different nutritional supplements that do help.
Right, and that's what I ended up doing.
Okay, yeah.
But there's
I don't know about
there's
the
a
medication.
thing. Oh, what was it? It was a real goofy ass name too that he recommended to me. It was like, I think it was literally called like tinnitus stop, and it may have been over the counter, but like the way he framed it for me, it sounded like he's like, you probably, like, you could take it.
Yeah. But I don't know if it's going to do anything.
Like,
yeah.
it may not, well, not only may not do anything, but he's just right out said to me, he says, the side effects may not even be worth it. Like, you might get nauseous from it. You probably shouldn't even.
Yeah.
So then I said to him, okay, what can I do dietarily? Are there things I could avoid? Are there things I could eat? And he told me that the vitamin Bs are very good for it.
Yeah.
Because basically the way he explained it was, imagine a wire with no rubber on it, just hitting, and that's what's, causing it. These little nerves that are the size of hairs, basically, in the inner ear, that do have protective coating. That protective coating was either eaten away at or just not being refurbished the way it should have been.
Interesting.
And now those
kind
hairs...
of like how it'll eat away cartilage. It sounds like it'll eat away whatever
Right.
that is. It's really interesting.
It was just in my left ear, and I do musical things. I listen to music. I play with my buddies every once in a while, but never in my life was anything like in my left ear. I was never blasted in the left ear. I've been blasted in the right ear.
Yeah,
and it's
but
fine.
not the left.
Right, but never the left.
Like, this is the good ear.
Right. And now that I'm used to it and I manage it, at this point, it's coming and going. I do the dietary stuff.
Yeah.
And I've gotten it better.
And it's changed.
And it has changed for the better. Now, it's, I would say, 30% of the time it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm exposed to a loud noise, it'll come back. And then it will dissipate again. But for a while there, it is, like sleep. I would leave the TV on, not because it would drown out the ringing, but so that I would pay attention to it.
So that you weren't hearing the beep.
Right.
I've read a story about Marilyn Manson, who also has the ringing in his ears, and he goes to sleep with like the TV very loud. It was like a girlfriend that was living with him was complaining about how hard it was to live with him because when they go to bed, they have to have the TV blaring so he could regulate his ringing ears. But that's,
and
that does not sound like a good solution.
Yeah, well, it's and like for me, like I would put on like Netflix or something that would continuously play, so that I could lay there and be comfy in bed and be ready for sleep, but I could pay attention to the show.
Right.
And it would distract me because during the day...
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
It would distract me.
It's awful.
Right. During the day, like, daily life would distract me from it when it was constant.
Yeah.
But at night, when everything else is quiet, it was just there, and it was even louder because now there's nothing else to compete with it.
Well, it's funny that you were talking about the B vitamins because I don't know if anyone's tested you, done any kind of genetic testing. There's this testing called Genomind that I actually had done and I sent it to like 5 of my doctors. They never, I don't know, maybe they didn't look at it. It's good for to find out different medications if it's good for your genetic profile or not. But one of the things they test for on that, which is important for a lot of people is called the MTHFR gene mutation.
Okay.
And if you have it, it means you are not a methylator. And so you have to take methylated B vitamins. So like, let's say those B vitamins didn't work for you, but you didn't know you had the gene mutation, which just meant you needed a methylated version form of your B vitamin. So they make like a methylfolate, a methylated B12, right? So, but for people who do have this gene mutation, and so if you replace that with a methylated B, it's like putting a little puzzle piece into the brain. That's how they explained it to me, because they said, "Did you know you had this gene mutation?" I said, "No," and I have anxiety, depression, pain, and they migraines. They said this could be why. We need to make sure that if we give this to you, it doesn't help remedy some of your problems, and that's why you really have to look at everything.
Yeah.
But it did not help my problems. But I have to assume not having the right B inside of me was not helping me either. So now I make sure to supplement with a methylated, with methylfolate and methylated B12. But for those people, it is like a missing link, and sometimes it can pop people right out of depression. It stops them from having migraines. I wonder if it's like, probably also ringing in the ears, So if you are a person who thought, oh, B vitamins don't help me, it could be it's because you have the MTHFR gene mutation, and you need a methylated version of B, which is, important. But again, most doctors do not tell you that. That doctor wasn't going to probably tell you if this one didn't work for you, maybe you need a methylated version.
Right. And I'll go one step further, and I've gotten into the habit of every doctor I speak to about anything, I always ask, what dietarily can I do?
Yeah.
And
but most of them don't have a friggin' clue.
Most of them, or they're just taken by surprise.
Yeah, that you would even ask.
That I would even
have that
ask such a thing.
Yeah.
And the rheumatologist I was dealing with, who was very good, I just felt like his personality and my personality clashed right away. I'm pretty easygoing. I get along.
Yeah.
But when he hit me with that, you have tattoos. We got to give you all these unnecessary
Kind of like when my doctor said your ovary that can't cause you pain. It was like at the same time, and you're like, you could be the best doctor in the world. You just ruined it for me.
Yeah, you didn't get off on the right foot here. Yeah. But he was one who, when I first went to him, he said, well, I'm going to give you all this medicine. Punk.
Yeah.
And he gave me, like, a stack of prescriptions the size of like a Harry Potter book. And I said, okay, that's all well and good.
Yeah.
Thinking to myself, I'm not gonna hand in all of these.
Yes.
So I'm like, what can I do?
How can I possibly afford all of these for another
right.
thing? And what are the side effects of each one?
And like, I've been super lucky with finding like the good primary care doctor in Romascavenge. I've been super lucky because he hooked me up with a pharmacy that he works directly with.
Like a local pharmacy.
Yeah.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
It's not a CVS.
It's not, none of those.
Yeah.
And
that's so nice when they treat you like a person too.
Right, yeah. And when he framed it to me, he said, family owned, they're good people, they're going to take care of you.
Yeah.
So it's right down the road from him, so I could see him and then go there. And they've helped me out, because again, in the beginning I had no insurance, and so whatever the other doctors were throwing at me, I was doing Walmart pharmacy basically was the cheapest alternative for me at the time.
No one's caring there.
No.
No one's like, Albert, how are you doing? Did any of these medicines help you?
And if you want consultation, and really...
Wait in line and have the snarky person come over to you to answer your question.
Right. You either get this snarky Walmart pharmacist, or in my Walmart, it's the old lady who's 82 years old, who's over it. She's just giving people their medicine and doesn't want to hear
no
it.
personal...
Right.
Yeah.
And really, I'm not even blaming her.
It's set up this way.
Right,
exactly. It's not her fault.
Right.
It's just, there's no reason for her to be any different.
Right. It's just the job for her.
Yeah.
And who also knows how many just awful humans she's bombarded with.
Yeah, it's a domino effect, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that is how it happened. One person, and it just sets off a whole chain of events across.
Right.
you know.
Exactly.
And then no one's in a good mood.
Right. It's just grumpy, sick people just walking around.
It's really hard to rise above once once someone shit on you for the day.
Right.
You tend to, everyone starts shitting after that
Right.
on everyone else.
So
No, it's just the way it is.
what are some dietary things that you've developed that help you?
Well, when I had the brain evaluation last November in Dallas, Texas, at the Psychoneuroplasticity Center, it's a very long word, hard to say. They did look at, the one thing they didn't do was look at me from an infectious disease perspective. They didn't, check to see if I had brucellosis from working on a pig farm, which is common in, even goats, whatever. If you've been to a petting zoo, you could be sick. But they didn't check for Lyme or any of the what they call co-infections, which I just call infections. Stop making people think that just because you have Lyme, the only way you could have these other things is because you have Lyme. Not true, not true. So they did not check out any of those things. I wish they had. But what they did check out was they ran a complete hormonal panel. They ran it's called Omega Quant, which checks to see if you have like essential fatty acids, omegas, enough of them in your body, because those really help, I guess, regulate yourself. And they also checked, did a whole nutritional panel as well. And so for me, supplementation and whatnot is, taking a very high quality probiotic. Also, when I'm on my antibiotics, I'm on a prescription probiotic called Visobiome, which is 450 billion per packet. Wow. Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And then also, I do take the methylfolate and the methylated B12. I take some herbs that help with Lyme. There's also something called biofilms. You need to treat those because the biofilms can also make you sick, even though you have a die-off. And all these things are very well documented. I mean, you can look at actual scientific research of these. It's not a theory. So I take that. Doctor just gave me, the new doctor I went to gave me, hold on. Other important things I take. Glutathione, so important for liver function. That was the other thing they made me start taking, was glutathione. So important. Detoxify, especially with Lyme, you need to keep your body healthy and detoxifying. So glutathione is very important. Doctor recently just gave me something called SBI Protect, which is, it's an IgG. I don't know. It's an immunoglobulin serum-derived bovine concentrate of some sort. That's supposed to help people like me. And the other thing, though, I swear by, and a lot of people do, you can go on Amazon and read the reviews, is something called lauricidin. It's a monolaurin supplement. It's actually a derivative of coconut. It really kind of like scrubs the inside of your body and kind of cleans it up. I don't know. I definitely feel different when I take it. I notice physical things that kind of resolve. So I know it's good for me. And I know that when I started my Lyme treatment, he told me to be on this for 2 months and then go off of it. I was off of it for like 4 months, but just recently I started to feel, I was like, oh, I'm kind of feeling that weird thing again. And so I started taking it again. Okay. So, I mean, it's hard to define. For some people, though, with like, people will say it helps with their herpes, with their gut. It's good for the gut. It helps any kind of viral load, I think. So that's, bacterial. It helps a lot of things. I mean, I don't know. But it says, this is what it says, monolaurin may help promote a strong immune defense, support a healthy balance of gut bacteria, and maintain healthy levels of yeast, which all of those are very important. If you have a yeast overload, you need to be treating the yeast, because that can also make you very sick, Yeah. So, all those things. We have to look at all those things.
Yeah. No, it can be overwhelming.
Yeah. Oh, tick testing. A lot of people will go get tick testing. So here's what the actual protocol is, per Dr. Stephen Phillips and Dana Parrish, who've been working together writing a book, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to speak with either of them. But I had a friend who got bit by a tick. I said, and he was getting ready to have surgery. I was totally freaked out. I said, should they have sent that tick in for testing? Because they didn't save it. And they said, no. What you do is, if you want to send the tick in, fine, send it in. You can see what else the tick has. But by the time you get the tick testing, you should have already been treated. So for every tick bite, you should go on antibiotics for 2 weeks. That's for every time you're bitten. And that should prevent a Lyme manifestation. But you have to do it immediately.
Right.
If you want to get the tick tested, fine. If you're just curious to see if it has other, because just like, the poacin and the alpha-gal or whatever, if you want to know if you should be looking out for any of those other things, fine, do that. But do not wait to see a doctor until after you get that tick, because tick testing is very unreliable. Yes, there's some more qualified labs, but, maybe they're just looking at your tick and guessing. I mean, I don't know. I'm not in that lab. I don't know how accountable they are for your tick diagnosis, really.
Right.
So I was like, don't be stupid. Just get the antibiotic. Go see your doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what he did. I pushed him a little, and his doctor was like, oh my God, you were bit by a tick. Yes, of course we need to treat you.
Right.
So I think it depends on what area you're in. I had another friend, he has a place in Maine.
Okay.
He got bit by a tick. He took the tick. He did send it in, but also at the same time, the doctor said, no, we need to put you on an antibiotic right away. So in places like Maine, they already do that. They didn't need me to nag them.
Right.
But if you need negged, you know where to come. I'll do that for you.
Yeah, probably it's so rampant up there that they're probably coming around and realizing we got to do something about this.
Yeah. They seem to be pretty responsible with it, although I've heard other people say, oh no, Maine hasn't gotten a handle on it. From my experience and what I've seen from just anecdotal, people I know and what they've told me, it seems like Maine is a little more with it than some other parts of the country.
Yeah.
So, and the same people I told you about where I was, had my collapsed lung and I was wheezing and I was, I said, what was her tests? What were her labs for this, this, and this? And some of them, they hadn't been done, but they said, oh, the Bartonella test came back negative. First of all, there's only only Galaxy Diagnostics can run the Bartonella test. So if you tell me you have a negative Bartonella test and it was LabCorp, that's going to make me crazy. And that's what she was telling me as my lung was collapsing. And then I was like, I can't answer this. All she has to do is Google and she would know about the Bartonella testing. Right. And so I gave up. But these, and so I had to take a break because, like I said, I can't fix other people. I can't make people go get tested. But what I don't like is watching someone die. And that's what I felt like I was doing with that. And it's, they're very sweet people. But all I could think is, I am watching you die. And I'm not being able to intervene or help. And so this is not my problem. I have to back away. But they had just contacted me again recently. And after all the information I've sent and stories and research articles and scientific journals and all this information that I thought would help them, I said, just go down the rabbit hole and see what you come up with, because this is how I feel. I have a feeling this is her problem and her sickness. Mm-hmm. I just got an email saying, but I was just wondering your opinion about this. I'm having gastroparesis, and do you really think I could have Lyme? I don't remember ever being bit. I almost burst into flames. Because like most people do not remember being bit.
Right.
Lots of times there is no awareness either, because you could be sick way later. Your immune system could have been fine. You could have been handling that Lyme for years, and then all of a sudden your immune system couldn't handle it, whether that was a car accident, a surgery. Someone told me they got sick, it activated their Lyme after Botox, because it's a neurotoxin. Look, I'm a big fan of Botox. I don't want to spread any rumors about Botox. Keep Botoxing people, but I'm just saying, so people can their immune system can react from a variety of ways, right? So you could be well one day and not the next, and you're not going to remember that bite because it could have happened, years ago. So, I don't know.
So now, is your Instagram page, and we can, if it is, we can snap this, but is it public or do you have it as a private?
No, it's public. The only time I ever take it private is I'm going to be away from it, because you get those weird spam things. Or people start spamming your comments of things they're selling. So if I'm away from my Instagram account, I would set it to private. But yes, it's public.
Okay. So if people wanted to see, because you have a lot of information on there that's good information. Mm-hmm. So could you just tell me your handle.
Yep, it's Life. It's at Life with Lyme and Ehlers-Danlos, and that is EHLERSDANLOS.
Okay.
And Lyme, LYME.
Okay.
Life,
Cool.
LIFE. So I did it all backwards. But
Yeah, and I'm going to be post like with, you know, if it's cool with you, I'm going to put your handle
yeah.
within these posts. This way, as we're talking about it, people hear you say it, they can find it
Yeah.
and check it out.
Yeah.
I've thumbed through your page, just even feeling well, just to know what's going on.
Yeah.
And the whole thing, just in case, is to build the knowledge.
Well, yeah, I don't want my page to be about fear. It's more about awareness. I mean, look, there's so many weird things. Like, I was just reading about, like, silica, I guess poisoning, toxicity, I don't know, with people who work with marble countertops and whatnot, getting this, you know, silica disease in their lungs and, like, need lung transplants, you know. So my page is a lot of that kind of stuff, too. You know, things that are happening out there that maybe you didn't know about that could be affecting your health or someone you know, or maybe you could prevent something by happening by doing something stupid with a kitchen counter. I don't know.
Right.
But that's mostly what it is. I like it to be pretty easy to digest, but also very scientifically supported. I don't like to post anything that hasn't been vetted by real science,
Right.
because that's how misinformation gets out there, and that's kind of how this whole Lyme thing went awry.
Right.
Great movies about that are Under Our Skin and Emergence. It's like part 1 and part 2. Really interesting information about Lyme disease, Lyme manifestation, and how the Lyme thing kind of went out of control.
Right. Are those documentaries?
Yes, that's a documentary.
Great.
Yeah. So I really, everything I post is real. I'm not into opinion. I have my own opinions. I'll be the opinion person,
Right.
but I like to post facts,
Gotcha.
real science-based facts.
Right.
You know, not. I like it to come from a university, preferably. You know, with doctors who are actually doctors.
Right. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah. Well, there's just too much misinformation, and it gets really, that part gets frightening when you have so much of that, because so much information is fear-based, because that's what gets the clicks, but that's not actually helpful to anyone.
Right. I understand. I gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Right, well, I guess we're going to wrap it up now.
Okay.
But I first of all appreciate you going through all this, talking about it for the benefit of other people. All the, you know, the ins and outs and the intimacies of it.
Yeah.
Not everybody wants to be totally forthright with. So I appreciate you having me here and having that conversation. And doing the show. Like, this is going to just be really good for anybody who listens to it, I feel.
I hope so. I mean, look, we all know chronic illness is huge. I mean, it's like every person's got like a hypothyroidism or something, and why?
Like, yeah.
You know, and lots of times there's a bacterial reason. We have to start looking at that. You know, it's just, but yes, chronic illness is rampant. Why? I mean, almost everyone I know has some kind of pain problem. Nothing, it's not really identified. Oh, it's rheumatoid arthritis, but they don't ever test positive for, you know, a rheumatoid
Right.
factor.
And not to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but one of the first things I learned is that a raised rheumatoid factor could be a symptom of Lyme.
Can be, yes.
Especially because that's what happened to me. It was only slightly raised.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't crazy. It was only slightly
Right,
raised.
so it gives them a, like, maybe.
So it's like, oh, maybe, and then, you know, this one particular doctor just rode that horse right out of the stable.
Yeah.
So it's, oh, okay, it's rheumatoid, but it was only slightly risen, and I wasn't getting like heat in the joints or anything.
Yeah, you weren't swelling. Or,
None
yeah.
of that.
Yeah, but
at
even
all.
with Lyme, you can swell just
Right.
like you would RA.
Right, and then for me, it turned out that little bit of a raise was the Lyme doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's very true. And, you know, they'll, my doctor talks about it, and I've read research on it, and that they love to prescribe the immunosuppressive drugs, even though they're really not sure what's going on with you. And the stuff I've read and talked to the doctor about and whatnot, the thing is, they say that the immunosuppressive drugs, why are you putting me on it if you don't
Right.
actually know why?
Right.
And the other thing is, your body does not attack itself without a reason. So why is it attacking?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a bacteria there? What is going on? And that's what you need to investigate. I haven't done enough research on that. I just know it in communication with experts. But I can tell you, if I had a diagnosis and that they said I should take immunosuppressive drugs, I would definitely be researching, why am I taking this, and is there a bacterial cause? And just hands down, because once you start with that, you're just kind of screwing up your whole body. You really need to go into it eyes wide open and not just, well, my doctor's nice, this is what he said.
Right.
That's not a good enough reason.
Yeah.
If you're diagnosed with MS, lupus, RA, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. You have someone like Chris Christopherson, who was told for like 30 years he had fibromyalgia and Alzheimer's. You know what he didn't have? Fibromyalgia or Alzheimer's. It was Lyme the whole time. Once they treated him for Lyme, he was able to go back on tour. He's not as in much pain, but some of that neurological damage was permanent. Right? Because his brain was not functioning, and but he's somewhat better now. So, but he could have saved himself 30 years of pain of fibromyalgia and a later diagnosis of Alzheimer's. That's not what it was. I mean, it's horrifying what we've done to people just because, some doctors decided, well, we're not looking at anything else. I've decided this is what it is. That's scary.
So we'll have to have you back on, and we'll do like a check-in.
You have too much to say, Ella.
No, it's not that at all. Because it's all,
I'm just kidding.
It's all good information.
I'm kidding.
But thank you again.
I'm so glad. Look, if this helps one person, I'm so happy.
And it's cool that it brought us back around.
Totally. Look at us.
Here we are again.
It's been a few years. Illness has brought us back together.
If anything good, there's a little sliver of goodness that came out of it. So thanks again.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to another episode of the Planet Shivers podcast. I want to thank Ella for coming on and just talking so in depth about both of her illnesses, and hopefully folks out there will be helped by it. By the time this podcast comes out, you will be able to listen to it on Apple Podcasts, the podcast app, Spotify, SoundCloud, Google Play, and YouTube with video accompaniment. If you'd like to help this podcast with a donation or other forms of support, you can go on our new Patreon account, which is Albert Shivers Artist. There's information there on my personal artwork as well as the podcast. You can also see some more of my work and more behind the scenes work on the podcast on my Instagram handle at Albert Shivers. Also, you could check out our sound guy, Isaac Wilson, on Instagram at When in Zen. Also a reminder, Ella Steinbeck's Instagram page is at Life with Lyme and Eller Daniels. That will also be in the description. This way you can get the right spelling or just copy and paste it and you'll be there. Thanks for listening again. Next time will be part 2 with Don Wilson, visual artist, In My Blood, part 2. Should check that out too, and check out all the previous episodes. They're all there, just waiting to be heard. Alright, thanks again for listening. Catch you next time.